as far as like using AI to, take the place of a human to call a test, I just don't feel like we're there yet. And once again, I feel like there's so many points that you have to take when calling a test that, you have to know that quantitative and qualitative background data that goes into the test. And, a lot of times the AI just isn't going to know all that information.
Hi, my name is Muqtada Miyadara, and I'm a senior optimization specialist and your host for this episode of the Experimentation podcast. On today's episode, we have Joey Herzberg, who shares his thoughts on how AI fits in the experimentation lifecycle, the utility of keeping easily referenced records of test results, and the importance of experimentation strategy with regards to sample ratios. We hope you enjoy the episode. Hi there, and welcome to the Experimentation podcast. This is the interview series where people in the CRO space talk to other people in the CRO space. My name is Muqtada Miyadara. I work with the Upbound Group, LLC. I'm a senior digital optimization specialist, and I am joined here today with Joey Herzberg, who is a senior website optimization manager with AWS.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me today, Book2Dad.
It's a pleasure to have you. Really exciting opportunity to get to speak to you and interview you. You're kind of where I want to be professionally.
Oh,
So, yeah, if you want to provide me a step-by-step instruction manual on how to get there, happy to have it. So you started off kind of in the early 2000s in the realm of graphic design
right.
and have weaved your way here over the years. You want to talk me through a little bit what that professional journey looked like?
Sure, of course. Yeah, early on in my career, especially my early education, I really enjoyed graphic design, specifically print design, doing like newspaper ads and that sort of stuff. And I did that for many years and really enjoyed dabbling in Photoshop and the Creative Cloud. And then I soon realized, I really enjoy working in digital. So it seemed to me the print piece was kind of slowly dying away. And I was like, I better pivot and find, my next big thing. And it looked like digital was that answer. So I moved from print to digital and started designing and coding front ends to websites. So, it started pretty simple, just, simple landing pages, that sort of stuff. And then I worked my way up to actually getting a gig at a fintech company and redesigning the front end of their website. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked just interacting with the customer and seeing how they were interacting with the website. And I mean that through analytics. So once I, started creating websites, I really wanted to know how they were performing. So I started using Google Analytics and, heat mapping solutions, those sort of things, and really studying the user journey. And I quickly realized, there's got to be ways I can improve this. So I started attending seminars and conferences, and I think it was around 2015 timeframe, somewhere around there. I went to one conference in Atlanta and started learning more about CRO. And from there, it just took off. I uh, went back to my employer and pitched, buying some, uh, Optimizely at the time. So I was like, hey, we really need to buy some software to really dial in on a customer experience. So I, made a pitch deck, and long story short, we purchased Optimizely, and then, I ran their CRO program. And then over the years, I perfected the talent more and more, and then eventually got to where I am now, which is at AWS.
Yeah, it seems like I've talked to a number of CRO people who I don't think intended to enter the space, but because of adjacent skill sets and their own inherent curiosity, kind of found their way here. Plus, this burning desire to make things better, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
uh, I'm kind of in a similar boat. Just for some background, I studied originally software engineering in school, and then I did an internship, and I was like, nope, I'm good. I've seen how these guys work, and I'm out. I don't want that 70-hour work week as
I
a,
get it.
like a senior manager. So I jumped ship to design, UX design specifically, and I was very curious about UX research. So I took a lot of classes around like attitudes and behaviors and strategic design and things like that. And then I graduated and I applied for the designer role that's on my team currently, and I did not get it.
Oh
And then
no.
they called me back a couple months later and were like, "Hey, there's this role that's called testing and tagging. Can you do that? And I was like, what's involved? They're like, your technical skills fit. I was like, okay. Like, you need to know GTM because it was like, tagging architecture for Google Analytics,
Sure.
and then experimental design, and like research and building A/B tests with front end dev. And I was like, oh, okay. The latter one I can probably do right now. What is GTM? So that weekend I went and I
What's
like
the
did the
acronym?
Google Academy course,
Right.
Google Tag Manager, and
Right. Right.
I ended up doing that Google Academy course, and I went into the interview like Monday, that 3 days later, and was just like, I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit. What's a custom dimension? Let's find out together. So,
Hey,
and then
baptism
I
by
ended up here
fire.
in the space. Yeah, truly. That first year, I think I learned as much as I have learned, uh, well, or as much as I will learn across the following several years. So,
That's
um,
sometimes the best way. I felt like
oh yeah,
my experience was very similar with the front end coding because I just had a manager at the time was like, "This is what I want you to do," and I had no idea how to code anything. So I had the same thing. I had to take some classes, do a lot of shadowing, and then next thing you know, I'm deploying sloppy code. I eventually got more proficient at it, but you got to crawl before you can walk. So
listen, the number of times I deployed what I thought was a simple like script fix through
yeah.
GTM that I forgot to wrap in a try catch, and a
Oh
developer
yeah.
would come to me and be like, "Hello." So with AWS now, you're a senior website optimization manager. What is kind of your day to day, your workflow? What is it Joey does in a day?
So a lot of different things. The main mission is to promote the website testing channel at AWS. So basically influence other teams to run tests and optimizations within that channel. Keep up with the different programmatic uh, measurement pieces. So, test velocity, win rate. I'm trying to think what else. Just how many net new parts of the business are adopting testing as part of their optimizations. So, a lot of that just promoting experimentation. But then, like I said earlier, there's all the different programmatic pieces like checking in on tests to see, peeking to see where they're at, to see if they reach significance, turning off tests, iterating, writing results out. So definitely just all the things, that is incorporated into running a successful testing program.
Yeah, that sounds only very familiar.
Right.
So, uh, yeah, I think that's probably true of a lot of testing programs. Do you mind me asking what kind of like staff size do you have under the testing program currently?
Currently, it's myself and a PM, and then we have multiple stakeholders, and some of them are pretty proficient as well as in running their own tests. So I train other teams to basically be as self sufficient as possible. It's not a self service model yet, but we're trying to get it there.
That's really interesting. We flirted with empowering stakeholders to build their own tests, but we ran into difficulties of like consistency and stability of output. So
Yes, you have to have guardrails in place, and kind of like that one gatekeeper who basically makes sure everything is looking good before it gets released. But yes, that's a pretty big important part of that.
So I did see on your LinkedIn that you recently attended the Adobe Summit.
Yes.
Anything interesting that you took away from that that you would want to talk about? I know the big buzzword of the year is personalization, and it's something we're doubling down on hard at Upbound. So
Right, right. Yes, so absolutely personalization was a big buzzword in addition to AI. And Adobe does a great job of just basically showing you the best case scenario if you have all the pieces of their tech stack set up just so it's like a perfect storm. And the reality is most companies aren't going to have that perfect setup. I definitely would like to be at that future state one day, but I do enjoy using all their products and tools, especially Target and Adobe Analytics. But overall, they did a great job of just showcasing upcoming new technology. Yeah, so there's a product called Firefly that basically uses AI to create really awesome looking images and stuff. So um, I feel like the AI thing is kind of scary, but kind of cool at the same time. I don't really know how to feel about that yet. The whole Terminator cybernet thing, but hopefully it doesn't get that bad. But yeah, the conference was awesome. Adobe's conferences are always great. If you've never been, I highly encourage to attend one. They have excellent speakers. They have many of the engineers and folks who build the software sitting in the session, so you can ask them questions. And then of course they have like their sneaks, which is their sneak preview of all the kind of like upcoming under development software they're working on.
Phenomenal. I had the opportunity in October to go to Opticon in San Diego,
Oh yeah,
and
that's
I
a
had
great
a
conference.
pretty similar experience where, because we are Optimizely customers as well at
Yeah,
Upbound, and so we've been on their web experimentation platform for a few years, and a couple other small things, and there was definitely that, like, oh, look at the dream state of if you were 100
yes,
percent in the Optimizely ecosystem
exactly.
with our data platform and our CMP and this and that. Look at what you could do. It'd be unstoppable. And I'm like, that's amazing. We have several contracts. I don't know how to
Sure.
tell you this, you know?
Right.
But yeah, there were a lot of really cool things that came out of the conference. Very, very interesting things coming up. The AI piece is very huge. So we'll use that as a really clean segue, I
Nice
think.
segue there. Yeah, I like how you did
There's nothing quite like a transition that you acknowledge out loud.
that. Right.
So, uh, in the world of AI right now, I'm curious to know if and how you are using it in your program currently, and if there are gaps or opportunities you think that AI can really fill.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch.
Sure. So I just started using some AI to assist with writing out test results. So when I share out my test results, they're usually long form, with basically a paragraph that goes through all the metrics and how they perform, if they were significant or not, were they directional, um, you know, did we see any harm to specific metrics that we, basically think of as like do no harm metrics. So all that kind of stuff. It's like a paragraph that gets written. So I'm using AI basically to feed it the results out of a table form, and then the AI scrapes the table and writes out the results for me. So it's like a time saving measure. Um, Although I'm not using AI to call test results, I don't feel like, I feel like that's kind of like a slippery slope where you could just start feeding AI a bunch of test results and it could just tell you what's, did the control win, did the variant win? Does it recommend you to take another step? So I feel like there's ways you can use AI to automate your workflow to get more test out and to help with that flywheel. But as far as like using AI to, take the place of a human to call a test, I just don't feel like we're there yet. And once again, I feel like there's so many points that you have to take when calling a test that you have to know that quantitative and qualitative background data that goes into the test. And a lot of times the AI just isn't going to know all that information. It's just basically going to know whatever you feed it.
I would agree with that truly so strongly. We're kind of in a similar place in our program where we definitely see the utility of AI. I was doing a similar thing of trying to train a custom GPT to parse our test results and just summarize them really easily. And then
Right.
also to help with the briefing process. Because in
Exactly.
our workflow, we have to develop like a business brief that at the end of a testing cycle with an enhancement gets handed off to the product team to develop. And so there's a fair amount of kind of busy work involved with that, unfortunately, and we don't have dedicated project managers or anything. So there is this challenge inherent to, like, okay, I want to spend my time on the most valuable work. Let's help AI cut the chaff, right?
Yep.
So that's definitely kind of where we're at with that as well.
Yeah,
um
that's
I think the
great.
generative AI piece for copy, for assets, for even like simple code blocks, although it often does get some stuff wrong or just makes stuff up, which is very funny. I think those are all places where you can speed things up a fair bit.
There was one other thing I wanted to share about AI. It's I'm also using it to like, with copy to basically rewrite hypotheses. So I have a really specific format for hypotheses that says basically like, if we introduce this change, then we will see an X lift or increase in a specific metric because of X, Y, and Z. And many times the stakeholders I work with will not, fully bake out that hypothesis statement. So what I do is I take it, put it into our model, and it spits out the hypothesis in the correct format. And that way, when I share it out, it's following the same format that I use for all my tests.
That's really interesting. I do think that with intakes from stakeholders and organizational partners, one of the biggest challenges is like goal setting and expectation setting in terms of how we're going to meet those goals. So I've definitely run into a similar thing where it feels like, we'll get requests because people know what we're technically capable of, but really it's like they don't fully know what they're looking for within that. And so I think
Right.
having that structure to help clarify something and distill a thought or an idea into like, well, this is what we're changing, this is what we're hoping will happen because of that change is really, really valuable.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you got to be very concise and clear with your hypothesis statement, and of course, back it up with data. And you just want to make sure that it's always the foundation for your test. And if it's not fully baked out, then a lot of times your test, you won't get the results you were thinking you were going to get.
Oh, for sure. For sure. The other challenge I run into sometimes is when I know something might not test a certain way, but someone's really expecting results, and they're in a position where you can't necessarily say no to it. So you
Right.
have to be like, "We're going to run this, and I'm going to level set with you. This is not going to win, but I'll run it because I think you need to see that for yourself." But how, like, there's a way to sort of massage that statement so it's an exploratory thing and not like a I know
Exactly.
better kind of thing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've been surprised. I've been surprised. I've
Oh,
had like marketing stakeholders who come in and they're like, "We have to do this. It's much better practice." And I'll be like, "I have tested this area 100 times. You are
right.
dead wrong." And then I'll try it, and it like doubles conversion on a certain like proxy metric, and I'm just like, "Oh, I forget. People know what they're doing. People are really good at their jobs. Not just we're not the only experts in a space. Crazy. I
Sure.
should remember that."
But that's where a really good comprehensive test archive comes in handy, that you can tag or flag those winnings and are those learnings, and then that way you can easily call them up when someone requests a very similar test. You can be like, hey, I already did this on a very similar page, here's where the results, happy to help you coordinate this test, but you know I found very similar winnings with another test we ran. So that's kind of saved me a couple of times.
That is amazing because we're in the process of fleshing out our sort of repository, as we're calling it. But it is a challenge to find the right tool and the right format and the right ontology and categorization to make sure that your categories are correct, your labels are correct, how you folder everything. So
Yeah.
kind of high level, if you don't mind me asking, what would be your approach to that sort of categorization and cataloging?
Definitely. Well, the first thing is make sure it's easy accessible to all your different stakeholders and partners and customers, so everyone can see it and everyone can access it. The second part is try to be as intentional as possible with the different categories within the archive. So you want to make sure you have the hypothesis, you have the business unit you're running the test for, obviously the audience, the the findings, what was the winner or what was the outcome, and then some kind of brief indicator of how the test performed and next steps. So, and then if they want to, tease them with the information, if they want to go more, I would link to our actual test plan itself that has all the full details. But I always think of the repository as just like a quick snippet of how the test performed that someone can easily access and filter out based on, certain business criteria.
No, that's really cool. We're kind of running into that challenge as well, where we would like to label things to where we can sort of see the intersection of ideas as well, where we're like, well, this touches our checkout flow, but it also touches these like UX concepts. So we know that these patterns are in use in these places and so on and so forth. Managing that architecture becomes incredibly complex really quickly, and we're
Yes.
running into the need for like almost like a data dictionary of just how we've organized the document. So like documentation for the documentation, which
Sure.
is in itself, I think it's very indicative of kind of the space that we're in.
Right. It is. It is. Lots of acronyms, lots of nuances, and all the business metrics, the performance KPIs, all those. You have to have some kind of definitions for all those, especially for someone who's new to the team.
Oh, on our SharePoint, we have a site that is just our 3 letter acronyms unique to the business. So
Wow.
some of them are standard industry 3 letter acronyms that we have repurposed, and it's
Oh, wow.
deeply frustrating because you will hear both in a call sometimes, and you're like, come on, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, what
So
is that? ABC?
now there's something interesting there about like the potential use of AI in documentation and in your catalog to potentially be able to even summarize your repository for you in places, or to scrape it for you and pull
Yeah,
information.
absolutely. Yeah. Having an AI attached to your repository so you could just type in a query, like what is the most popular type of test we've ran this year, or what is you know, the trends we're seeing across these type of pages on the website, just those quick queries that would take you minutes to search for would just be easy to bring up with AI.
Definitely.
I think
And
oh wait,
there's
I think maybe we
Yeah,
should
go
talk
ahead.
offline about maybe creating a product here. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, that's how these things usually start.
Right.
No, my boss and I have had that conversation a few times of, like there's an idea here. If any of us had the time and the ability to invest in it, like resource wise,
Right.
it's
Yes,
a
I
pretty
agree.
uncharted space right now.
It is. It is because I don't. I've worked with a couple of different over the years. I've worked with a couple of different software tech stacks for testing, and they're all great at running the tests and presenting results, but they're all missing that one component, which is like the categorization of results and archives and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, for sure. Um, the last piece on AI that I was making notes on that I'm curious to get your thoughts on. I was seeing some stuff online about people who are using AI and generative AI chatbots in general to sort of act as a sounding board when they are strategizing, when they're planning, when they're coming up with ideas. Kind of like what you were describing about like distilling hypotheses down to something that's more templatized. Like I'm seeing that there's a trend of people beginning to use it creatively as well. uh do you see a space for that in your process, and like what are the potential dangers inherent to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I mentioned earlier, that product from Adobe, it produces some really great image and assets for advertisers to spin up on the fly. I mean, I think the downside of that is obviously the creators, those who spent years honing their talents with, perfecting themselves at Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and sketching and drawing vectorized images. So I think there is a fine line to walk with some of that. Now in our space is a little different. We're just trying to fine tune or hone in on really good hypotheses, and maybe using the AI, like you said, to understand kind of opportunities on the website. Feed it a bunch of data. Here's how folks are performing on certain pages, and the average bounce rate is XYZ, and on this page is higher. How can we create a hypothesis to fix that? So it's a little bit different compared to, like I said, the creatives who are actually creating images and content. But I do think there's opportunity to hone in further with AI with testing. It's just a matter of training the models and having them become more proficient in your specific website with your specific data set, and finding a way to feed it
Yeah.
into the AI.
Yeah, and what's curious is like if like say Adobe or Optimizely or whoever were to, and I don't know how this would work from a data legality perspective, but if they had, all their different programs that are being run through their system, and their AI was trained and like knew about experimentation specifically, and it knew your program, but it also had access to industry level data to be like, hey, other people in like the finance area are doing these kinds of tests right now,
Right.
or are personalizing these kinds of hypotheses.
Exactly.
uh, uh, could be a game changer, really, of like keeping you really competitive and bleeding edge.
Yeah.
Cutting edge, bleeding edge, cutting edge,
Cutting edge.
whatever.
Yeah. No. Agreed. That's a great analogy for the whole situation. And I mean, there's lots of opportunity out there, and I haven't seen one tech company with a testing product really, announce any AI products yet. outside of what you mentioned. I'm sure stuff is on the horizon.
One of the learnings I had at the conference I went to last year was around like testing, like the power of tests and like the statistical necessity of like even splits, even power splits,
Hmm.
and so on and so forth. So in your experience, kind of uh, what makes or breaks that in relation to an experiment, or a successful experiment, I should say?
Yeah, so many times you don't want to have an inconclusive experiment. You want to have some definite results that you can use as recommendations or learnings that you can iterate on. So, an underpowered test many times will result in inconclusive results. And a lot of times it's just from the sample size not being large enough, or the the change that was proposed was just not strong enough to initiate a reaction from a visitor. So I always try to get folks who are anyone, any of my customers or stakeholders who are interested in running a test, always make sure that they scope out their data and their opportunity before coming up with a hypothesis. And by that I mean just making sure they have ample sample size. I mean, excuse
There's
me,
enough
ample
traffic.
traffic, yes, to
Yeah.
actually produce that sample size. Another thing is you don't want to have to run a test for like months and months. Just that's kind of like going to go against your whole thing. If you're running a testing program, you don't have months to run a test. So um, it's good to scope it out prior to even come up with a hypothesis to make sure that you have enough traffic and it's not going to take you months to actually reach significance.
That's one of those things I'm learning when it comes to prioritizing and building a roadmap is for the lower trafficked areas of our products, it makes the most sense to run as close to like a 50-50 split as possible to like maintain the power of the sample size, but then also to just take bigger swings in those regions, because like you know how it is with like smaller changes, it's harder to eke out major conversion improvements or degradations, whether that's
Right.
any conclusivity to your point. So what I'm learning is, in those sort of shallower areas of volume, a lot more valuable to just kind of go all the way with something a little bit out there,
Yeah.
and then depending on how that performs, either reel it in or scale bigger.
Exactly. Yeah, those big swings are always worthwhile. Um, sometimes when someone comes up with a crazy idea, I'm never you know too hesitant to not do it. I'm always like, okay, well, let's just make sure we have the traffic to run it, and if all the data looks good, we can run it, then I'll go for it. But yeah, I guess the other thing I want to mention too is just like SRMs and all these biases that take place. Were you going to bring that up, or is it okay if I bring that up?
No, please feel free.
Okay,
This is as much
cool.
your conversation as mine.
Awesome. So yeah, all the different biases that take place that can potentially ruin your test results, or you know make it hard to come up with like a definitive result. So many times, and this happens in all programs, big and large, but there are going to be biases. That's why it's important to have some kind of fundamental knowledge of sample ratio mismatches, to basically look out for those flags, because not everyone has software that'll flag an uneven split. So it's good just to make sure that you have a fundamental knowledge of what a SRM is and what it means to your test results. And also what is the threshold for an SRM? Because if one is introduced into your results, it definitely can, like I said, in some instances, make your results, completely unusable. And
Oh yeah, it makes them real swingy in a real weird way.
yeah, you
So
might think, oh, I have a really big win here. Look at this, but then you say, wait, the let's look, why is this visit count so off? So having to put your unique visitors or your visit metric into a sample ratio mismatch calculator is one way of doing it. Another, like you said, is just having that automated piece that looks for it and flags the test. But yeah, so it's definitely something to be aware of when you're running a testing program.
yeah, and one of the solutions potentially there, if there's not something inbuilt to your testing tool, if you're using an external session recording slash journey analytics tool in the realm of content square, heap, quantum metric, etc., there's ways to set it up to where it can flag, like if you're feeding it your experiment data in terms of like if there's any sort of ID or identifying details that can be passed directly to that tool.
Yeah.
Very often they're set up in a way where you can alert based on changes in certain kinds of volume. So if you're able to set up that monitoring there, that could potentially be a solution.
Yeah, no, definitely could be a very valid solution. And then, I mean, the essence of an SRM is also could be an indicator of something nefarious going on in your tooling, in your setup. So I always recommend folks also to run AA tests frequently,
Mm,
just to rule out, in any underlying issues with their tech stack. Because even the best of the best still might have some kind of, issues going on behind the scenes you're not aware of. And the only way to really smoke that out is to, uh, run these AA tests.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it happens all the time. Like random API service fails, or just like one time our CSP randomly got like reverted to an older version and started blocking a very vital script that we were using, and
Right.
from some CDN that we had to have whitelisted. And so like yeah, these sorts of things definitely happen, and it's a really good monitoring idea. So uh beyond that, I like to finish off. So whenever we've done interviews in my organization for new
Yeah.
roles, I like
Okay.
the friendly thing that I like to do is I have some rapid fire like binary questions that I ask. So I
Okay.
thought I'd bring that to the table here.
Okay.
So we'll start with milk or dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate.
Excellent choice. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Phenomenal. Tea or coffee?
Coffee all day long.
Okay, all right, all right. I don't mind coffee. I am a tea guy myself. DC or Marvel, if you have an opinion.
Um, Marvel for sure. Although I'm not very happy with, the latest last year or so of Marvel movies, but hopefully Deadpool will bring us all some joy.
Definitely. And then also, I like to say to people, they gave you 20 years. You can give them a couple back. Like, it's okay. They'll pick it back up eventually, right?
That's
They
right.
have to.
Yeah.
With that
Yeah.
many billions of dollars, they have to. So,
Exactly.
um, and finally, favorite cuisine.
Mexican.
Phenomenal. As someone in Texas, I agree with that 1,000%. So, I think that's all the time that we have. It's getting late. I want to let you go and live your life. So, I really appreciate your time today, Joey.
Oh,
It was
thank you.
great
I
to meet you.
really
Great to
enjoyed it.
talk to you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
for having me.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing.